the Cooligans, buddy.
And it is quite the show today. I am solo today, well, obviously with Miguelito, but I'm excited about today's show because we have an incredible guest that is on the wide shot, but is not on the solo. It'd be weird if he was also in my ISO. But I'm absolutely honored. Welcome to the show. My name is Christian Polanco, but you are here to just witness something awesome with an incredible guest that I'm a huge fan of, and we have a lot of connections. We have a lot to discuss. You've seen him on Ted Lasso. He has a solo show coming out really, really soon, so go see that. But everybody, please give a warm round of applause to Brendan Hunt. Brendan, what's up, man?
Hello, Christian. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute honor. This is really cool. Obviously, I think a lot of people know you, and I feel like, especially with the hat, walking down the street, you're like almost always in character. Are you? Is it? I mean, the last few years have been pretty wild, but just walking through New York, is this? Are you getting? Hey, Coach Beard, what's good? What's up?
New York has been perhaps predictably very chill.
Okay.
Anywhere else I go, not chill at all.
That's what the New Yorkers are. We don't. Yeah, no, we're not gonna. It's almost if we are excited to see you, you're bothering us. Like, why are you in our space? Why are you making me feel something?
My day has a flow. You're fucking up my flow.
Without a doubt. So no, I'm honored that you're here. Obviously, you have a solo show and happening at the Soho Playhouse, right?
Yes, sir.
And I just want to give you an opportunity to just let people know about it and what made you. Actually from going to being on a very popular hit show, and I know there's always a lot of passion projects, a lot of things. There's something about on stage and live performance, especially as a stand-up comedian, that doing filmed projects is not always the same. But getting to do this, what was the inspiration? Why now?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, before Ted Lasso, I was always doing a lot of theater and the occasional solo show and stuff.
Yeah.
This is one of those where, like, I just kind of feel the compulsion based on, like, kind of what the story is. There's not much soccer at the show. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
But heads up, let everybody know.
But there is a tinge of Ted Lasso because what happened was. As we're finishing season 3, but we're taking like a writing break, and it's
it was called the writer's strike.
Oh, that was still to come, my friend. We're writing the show, and Jason gets these texts from the manager of the Foo Fighters. Now that weekend was at Wembley was going to be the gigantic Taylor Hawkins Memorial All-Star Tribute show.
Yeah.
And he's getting texts from the tour manager of the Foo Fighters, and they're like, "Hey, we're rehearsing for the show like 15 minutes away from where you guys are." And Jason's like, "Oh, okay. Well, we got work to do." Like, well, here's the thing: there's also a big special guest who's playing the show who's not going to be announced until the night, and it's Paul McCartney. And Jason's like, "Oh, well, okay, all right,
yeah, sure." I heard him.
And remember when I said you're a 15-minute walk away? Well, Paul starts rehearsing in 15 minutes, and would you like to come over and bring some friends? And like, so I'm a huge Beatles fan.
Was that an impersonation of Ringo?
No, that's me. Sadly, it was just me. And so I go over there, or we're going over there, and like we don't know if we're gonna meet Paul McCartney, but I am terrified. I'm fraught because like I don't want to be someone who meets. Am I allowed to swear in this show?
Yeah, go for it.
I don't want to be someone who meets Paul McCartney and fucks it up. You know.
Right.
And so I have all this family history with the Beatles from literally my first memory, through like the birth of my son, but I can't talk to Paul McCartney about that. And so, but what that did was it pushed it all down, and now it has to come out. And in the show, I tell everyone there all the things I could not tell Paul McCartney.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So, I might end up doing a solo show with all the things I couldn't tell Brendan Hunt. I'm quite excited to meet him. But that's awesome. All right. So you did mention Ted Lasso and the final. I'm not gonna say final season because who knows what the future holds. But as a fan of the show, and I think Ted Lasso came out in a very interesting time, right? Obviously during the pandemic, it was a it felt like a lot of people felt like it saved their lockdown or something like it gave them a sense of hope and sanity. It was just it was so incredibly charming. And then I've heard you on other shows talk about this, about everybody once they fell in love with the show, they were just like, when's the next one? When's the next season coming out? And I can understand how it's very taxing to put on a show like that. It's obviously a huge cast, a lot of work writing it. I have friends that are writers on the show. Jamie Lee is a comedian friend of mine. And so I'm as a fan, I just want to talk about the last season where I've genuinely felt like I felt the uncertainty of the is there gonna be another season, right? We did get the tease of the women's team, the Richmond women's team, but there was something to it was wrapped up. It was wrapped up in a way where so I'm just curious, what was your perspective in rewatching it of did it feel okay? Of if it is the end, did it feel all right? Did it settle and be like, okay, we close that chapter?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is years ago when we're putting the show together, we before we met Bill Lawrence, before we got hooked up with Apple. Me and Joe and Jason always saw it as the 3-part thing, and we were following the model of the UK Office of 6 episodes, movie. And so we kind of always had an ending in sight, and we were always going to get to that point. Now, turns out along the way, there were surprisingly a lot of people who started watching the show, who don't want it to end, and they're quite strident about it. Actually,
right. They want I think as the American audience started loving the show more and more, it started feeling like, well, this is gonna be Grey's Anatomy, right? Where we go for 45 seasons, days of our lives, over. You're never gonna end it because I love these characters so much. But there's something flattering to that because. They always say, especially as comedy writers and producers, they always say you keep the audience sort of wanting more. But you kept them. You gave them a hit of the absolutely most addictive drug, and we're like, hey, we ran out. What are we gonna do? So it's a difficult thing to balance, but I'm sure there's a lot of thought behind it.
Yeah, it's just that we were just committed to this journey, and then it's all right, we're going here, and what you all want us to do. What it's like you're at a party, a big party, and you're bringing drinks to someone, but on your way to bringing drinks, someone's like, Christian, and you're like, hey,
right.
Hey, oh my God,
you're stuck in this combo.
I haven't seen you in so long. It's just that this drink contains the antidote. I gotta get this over there. We still had to get to where we're going. But yeah, as you say, the door is not completely closed. So we'll see if we we had to take the just in case. Vibe in all directions. Just in case it's the end, let's end it. And just in case it's not the end, let's throw in a few seedlings so we can sprout them later if we end up being allowed to.
Yeah, one thing we had Christo and Tohib on the show a couple years ago, and then I also I was at MLS All-Star in Los Angeles, and Christo was there, and we just. Dude, the guy can't walk 5 feet without somebody asking for a photo, and he was just so kind and gracious. But I've interviewed a couple people from the cast, and just a cool thing about you've change these people's lives. I mean, it's actors love a great opportunity, but there's something specific about this show that, again, people love the characters so much. I mean, in the conversations about who the characters, would be, as far as when just on paper, did you think at all that it would resonate this deeply with other just human beings who really just love these characters?
I mean, we were gonna be showing our show on a streaming service that didn't exist. We had no idea about any of it. But in terms of changing folks' lives, who've worked on the show, that is one of the great thrills of it. Is because we didn't know any of these people before we started working on it. We never worked with any of these people before, except Jason knew Juno a little bit, and Brett had worked with Bill Lawrence a little bit. but Brett originally was a writer. He wasn't going to be cast in the show, and then
Right.
he made the right moves to bring
I
that
saw,
in. Luckily for us.
that's a great story too. He was in the writers' room and was like, I think I'm this guy, and just willed it, which is such a cool thing because he wasn't afraid to shoot his shot and ended up being one of the.
And he picked the timing right as well. Don't everyone in the writers' room go like saying, "Hey guys, stop a second. You know what? I think I should play Dr. Carnacopus." But everyone was awesome. Like there was not an asshole in the bunch, and if people are having positive things happen to them, it is largely because of who they are as people, and we were just very, very lucky to find them.
Amazing. I know our producer, Mike, his brother had a question. And
No, he was just curious.
Is that your brother who lives in Nice?
No, he doesn't live there, but he was visiting there. Yeah, the same
Okay,
one.
got it,
the same
got it,
one.
got
He
it.
wanted to ask.
Michael is wearing a Nice shirt, everybody. I'm not just randomly shouting out French beach town names. All right.
But his big question was, what was your favorite episode to record? What was your favorite episode to film, like as it was happening?
The Amsterdam episode, for sure. I used to live in Amsterdam. That's where I fell in love with football. Joe Kelly and Jason Sudeikis also did shifts in Amsterdam at the same comedy theater called Boom Chicago. And it's just irrevocably part of the sort of origin DNA of Ted Lasso, even though Ted Lasso did not exist there or anywhere else until the NBC thing in 2013. But to be able to go back to this city that means so much to me and stay in a hotel for the first time. Like I've been back to Amsterdam over and over again, but I'm always like on a friend's couch or Airbnb. But when you're working here, they put you up in one of those fancy hotels that you used to bike past drunk all the time. And that was a unique and singular thrill. One weird inside baseball thing about it. So, bike culture is very real in Amsterdam, and that's why we have it so much in the episode. And we knew we wanted to have this long, chat between Roy and Jamie on bikes, because, that's, the best part sometimes. It's like your bike, you've gone to some party that is, a half-hour bike ride away, and you're biking back, and you're just chatting with each other. And we ask the Dutch crew, so how do you usually, we assume you have a way to light, an entire bike ride. Mm-hmm. No, actually, no, we don't. We've never shot one of those. How could you never shot one? That's the basis of Dutch life.
The bike's literally strewn all about in Amsterdam.
So we may or may not have invented how to light a nighttime bike scene in the Dutch film industry.
It's a classic scene. I mean, what was there anything incredibly complicated? I guess I don't work in lighting, but it doesn't sound like it would be that crazy, right?
Well, they had these inflatable lights, nylon ones, and they were on top of a van, and you don't really aim those so much. You just kind of put them there.
Yeah.
And, and then we just had to go back the whole time. But because it was such a long shot, there was some complications to it that are above my pay grade. But but it was not as easy as we thought it would be, and it was very cool to throw the Dutch crew a new challenge.
Amazing. That was. That episode was very iconic, and you could tell as you were in character there, and in every scene, you were also really happy doing the scenes. You know what I mean? I could tell there was a genuine joy. And then I haven't performed. I've been to Amsterdam. I didn't perform stand-up. I performed a couple other places in Europe, but as a improviser and working in Europe, is it are the Dutch similar to the Germans with humor and stuff like that? Because I've heard that it can be a little bit they don't necessarily always get the sarcasm. I don't know if the Dutch are the exact same, but what were the comedic sort of hurdles and adjustments to performing?
What it comes down to is whether or not you're in a country who, when they watch American or English television, whether it's subtitled or dubbed. In Germany, it's dubbed. In Holland, it's subtitled. So Dutch people have a much quicker intake on American and English comedy and inflections because they've heard it done as it's actually done.
Gotcha.
And they just speak incredible English. They speak it better than we do. It's irritating. And now, mind you, when you're doing comedy for them, they're drunk. and it will revert to English as a second language.
Sure.
But that teaches you about, commitment. Commitment on stage. Like you've got to try to reach them. And there's, it was like a 300-seat theater in those days, and which for those of us at the time, that was like 300 people.
Yeah.
And they generally got it. But we also had to I don't want to quite say pander to them. We knew we were going to make fun of Dutch people, so we had to make fun of Americans first. That was always key.
You gotta be likable. Yeah. I've done stand up in Dublin, and this is what I.
How's their English over there?
You know what? It's a little difficult to understand, I'll be honest. You know what? The colloquialisms were the biggest challenge for me because I was there for I was doing stand up, but my brother is a professional handball player. So
what?
but not Olympic handball, which is soccer on the on a court. Or whatever.
What, Mad Max handball? What are we talking about?
Like squash, but with your hands. So you're hitting the ball with your hands instead of a racket, right? So there was a big...
And there's professionals who do that?
That's everyone else's reaction to that. Whatever Christian
there's a huge tournament in Ireland, the World Championships, and they were, it must have been nearly 1,000 players of different age groups and stuff like that. So that's what I was there for, and I would be watching the games, and Irish people would come up to me watching a match, and they'd be like, "Who you up for?" And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "Who you up for?" And I'm like, "Who?" I understand the word you're saying, who are you up for? But I don't know what that means. And they're like, "Who do you want to win?" I'm like, okay. But there was a dozen of those where I'm just I feel like a stupid American. Yeah. I'm like, I know the words you're saying, but I literally, I don't know the cool Irish slang that's being thrown.
Are you challenging me to a fight? Are you?
It could have.
Are we asking about gambling? What was happening right now?
But the cool thing I enjoyed about doing comedy there was that I got to learn. And I feel this a lot with stand-up. When you watch other comics and you see what the audience is laughing at, you get a quick understanding of the culture very quickly. So in Ireland, there were a lot of issues with austerity and stuff like that. So they were bailouts. I forgot this was in 2012 or something like that, and they were making fun of the Germans. And everybody. The fact that Germany bailed out the rest of the European Union financially, it was the most hilarious thing. It was just we're a welfare state, who cares or whatever, they're paying for it or whatever. But you got to very quickly understand what the lay of the land was, even though I was just there for 2 weeks. But I imagine from a comedy perspective, you must have learned a lot about the culture of Europe. I'm sure a lot of people traveled from different parts of the continent to be there. But I wonder what did you learn about comedy while you were performing there?
The commitment thing, is really what you take away the most from there. Because when you have, and I touch on this a little bit in my show, because it's been charitably described as being like the Beatles in Hamburg. You're getting your 10,000 hours, you're performing constantly, but it's English as a second language and they're drunk and you got to try to reach them. And so you have to be fully committed to every single scene, because if you drop it all, because you're literally trying to draw them in. They're not even facing the stage.
Right.
They're sitting sideways, they've got fucking dinner and beer, and okay, You've got to get them, and not even just when you're doing the scenes or the improvs. Even when you're introducing the scenes and just talking to the audience, or when you are behind the person who is introducing the scene. Everyone's got to be focused all the time, because every time we drop focus, we invite everyone in the audience to also drop focus. Okay. So it just trains you to keep your energy full and to play to the whistle.
Okay. Yeah. I did improv for about 6 years at UCB.
Nice.
And I was in a indie group as well. I haven't said this name in years, but it was 8 dudes, and our team name was Tickles. And we would start every show, and we're like, "Hey everybody!" I would usually introduce them. We're like, "Hey everybody, we're Tickles." And the team behind me, for some reason, they just made this choice one day. They used to go, "Ooh," woo before we started, and it was just surreal. But it was some of the most fun I ever had.
Yeah.
You know, I think I just stopped doing improv because I was doing so much stand up, and it was really the main thing I wanted to focus on. And then I started performing. You know, we would do shows here and there, and I just noticed that my teammates were just so unbelievably good. And I was just like, man, I'm holding the team back by not contributing as much as I really should because I was doing so much stand-up. Okay, a couple other things I want to talk about.
And by the way, I feel like we started without Alexis. Should we wait for Alexis to get here,
he
by the
should
way?
be- he should be
This
here.
is, you know,
Alexis
I was
just
told.
strolls in the middle of the interview. You don't have to worry about
Okay,
that.
cool. Because I was told Cooligans was plural, and I just want to.
Okay,
So
you know,
weird.
Brennan, you are the second Cooligan. So
Backup
congratulations.
Cooligan today, yeah.
You passed the audition. Well, Alexis is in London, and he's obviously he's a big Arsenal supporter. So you are the replacement Arsenal supporter. I do want to ask you just your thoughts on this team. You know, had a little bit of a rut, a couple, you know, for about a month or so, but a big win against Liverpool. But I mean, how do you become an Arsenal supporter, and then boom, how are you feeling about this this year?
Became an Arsenal supporter. I wasn't into soccer at all until I moved to Amsterdam. I had been vaguely cognizant of the '94 World Cup, and I was waiting tables at a restaurant in the '98 World Cup, where the down part of my shift happened to coincide with the main matches being played.
Yeah.
And you know, our kitchen staff like demanded that the World Cup be shown. I was like, all right, fine, okay, let's do it. But like, I was really kind of drawn in then a little bit, you know, and the Dutch team in particular were really interesting to me because not a lot of orange otherwise on this tournament, and Edgar Davids will really like draw you in.
Yeah, of course,
in a
yeah.
big way. But yeah, '99, I moved to Amsterdam, and you can't stream any of your sports then. There's no broadband.
Yeah.
And Michael Jordan had retired anyway, so I was like, all right, soccer, I'll give you a chance. Go to a couple Ajax games. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Start following Holland a little bit, but eventually there's just not enough English language coverage of that. So I started drifting to the Premier League a little bit, and there was kind of a natural flow toward Arsenal because of Dennis Bergkamp and Mark Overmars. And so I'm watching some Arsenal games, like they're fun. And then there was one day in particular, I'm with my aunt who's visiting, and we're crossing the Leidslip line, and, you know, near where my theater was, and we go past the Sky Sports Cafe, and there's a game on, and I see from the score, and like I'm at the point in like becoming a soccer fan where you're like, they put the home team first.
Yeah. That's the home. It's not at.
Yeah. So, all right, Chelsea 2, Arsenal nothing in the 70th minute. Oh, well, I mean, and my aunt, bless her heart, just like gets it, and she's like, I'm going to go to this internet cafe. Remember internet cafes?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to check my email. Like, all right, great. So
That's what you put a quarter in the computer for the internet. I don't know if you remember that, kids.
So I watched the last 20 minutes of this game, and in that 20 minutes, Kanu scores a hat trick. With each goal being better than the last. That's not quite true. The second goal, the ball literally got caught in the mud, and he kicked it in. But the third goal was borderline physically impossible, and it came from a botched clearance. Like somehow Ed DeHuey, the Chelsea goalkeeper, who's just panicked by Kanu.
Yeah.
Like he's scored 2 goals in the last 15 minutes, and Ed DeHuey like races all the way out to the to the right touchline, and he tries to clear it, but it just bounces off Kanu. And so Kanu then from the corner basically swerves it in to the net as 2 different Chelsea defenders like do identical synchronized swimming lunges toward it. And it was like, well, shit, these are my guys.
Yeah. Wow. Look, Auntie's a gooner. I mean, she brought you on board. What a great. So look, this year. Even talk about last year. It was just so kind of disappointing towards the end in first place for a lot of the year. But you know, Manchester City's gonna Manchester City, and but this year it's closer. Manchester City is, I believe, tied on points right now. But do you feel it? Is it possible for Arsenal to do it this year?
It's possible. It is possible. You need to hope that the early season failings of Man City will last all season, but they tend to not fail the second half of the
Yeah,
season.
that seems to be the issue. They were down 1 against in their last game and then ended up winning 3-1 or whatever.
Yeah. So you got to hope for that. And the other key is, I think, is Martinelli. Martinelli has had a bit of a drought in this first half of the season. He's scored very few goals, but they're all big goals.
Mm-hmm.
But given his age and given what he did last year, I'm hoping for a reversion to mean. And like the second half of the season, he explodes. And he becomes the goal scorer that they should have picked up in the January window, but did not. Because the goals got to come from somewhere, and I think they are overdue to come from him.
Okay, yeah, look. I'm an Everton fan, and I just if Arsenal could just gift us the 10 points that the Premier League deducted, it would be would be lovely. That'd be a kind gesture. If you're not gonna win the league, just give us the points. I mean, that's the kind thing to do. But yeah, it is a complicated, sort of feel.
Why does Arsenal have to give you the points?
Yeah,
What about 18 other teams?
Look, I'm just begging at this point, you know. I'm just like, please, sir, let's a couple Premier League points, please. The other thing I wanted to ask, yeah, I did see you mentioned obviously the Beatles and the solo show being about the Beatles, but you mentioned on Kimmel,
Mm-hmm.
and about being an anglophile, and you have a great story just about pretending to be British for like a whole summer or something like that for a summer job.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about it now? Is it like just like, are you proud of yourself? I'll be proud of yourself for keeping the bit going for that long. I don't even know if I could do that. It's like a method acting at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it literally was just a spur of the moment decision as I'm walking to this job interview. And it was because, a friend of mine worked for this company too, but she was quitting. But she wanted to like introduce me. So she takes me to like the main, tour stand at the then Sears Tower. But I don't talk to anybody. Because they sent me to the office. And then she's like, all right, you go to the office down here. So I'm walking by myself and I'm like, well, they don't know who I am. They didn't hear me talk.
Damn.
For all they know, I could be English. Wait a minute. And then I go in, I'm like, am I going to do this? I'm going to do this. And I go in, the lady's on the phone, and she gives me the, 1 moment, please, blah, 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 blah. Okay, how can I help you? I'm like, may I have an application, please?
It's just a great, and I believe you were 16 or 17 at the time?
Yeah, it was the summer I turned 17, yeah.
So, I mean, the confidence to do that is like, I remember myself, I wouldn't have, even if it was like a girl asking, I'm like, no, I'm just gonna be shy and nervous. Cause I didn't start doing comedy until I was about 23, 24. So I wasn't like a theater kid.
Mm-hmm.
I went to school for computer science and stuff like that. So that's why I kind of respect it so much. It was just the recklessness of it all. But then to be like, okay, this is who I'm going to be for, because sometimes when you go from like junior high school to high school, you're like, these people don't know who I am. I'm going to be the Fonz. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be cool. That's what I thought. I was going to be like, I'm not going to go in with this shy little virgin or whatever, which is... Kids, it's okay to be a virgin at 14. Trust me. Don't let anybody shame you for that.
Just let it happen. Don't make it happen. Let it happen. It's gonna be fine.
Even in college, like me, it was still okay. Even though that's
cosine.
That's when I started getting bullied. But don't let them win. So I love that. But you mentioned being an anglophile, and obviously the Beatles are a big part of the solo show, and I grew up in Brooklyn, a Dominican kid, immigrant family. The Beatles weren't playing, very often. I really had to search and find the Beatles. But when I found the Beatles, I was like, oh, I get it. Like, everybody's talking about these guys, and they seem to be pretty awesome. But your interest with the UK and just being and the English, were the Beatles just a huge part of that, or were there other more kind of influences?
Beatles were the first and biggest foundational block of that. But then I saw on a school field trip, I saw a production of Midsummer Night's Dream that absolutely blew the doors off me. I was like, what? And then got really into Shakespeare and like took a Shakespeare summer workshop during high school. once. And, you know, on PBS on Sunday nights, they would have this run of English shows. The first one I didn't watch. I think it was either Upstairs, Downstairs, or Have You Been Served? But that was clearly dumb, and I wasn't going to do that. But then it was Monty Python, which I didn't always get, but I was always fascinated by.
Sure.
Dave Allen at Large. Dave Allen was I believe, Northern Irish comedian who would basically just sit in a chair facing the audience with a whiskey and a cigarette and tell jokes that probably would get him canceled now, and do the occasional sketch. And then Doctor Who. And like all the rest was build up to Doctor Who. Like Doctor Who was my shit more than any of that other stuff. And yeah, just didn't really realize it, but I was becoming an anglophile. Not to the degree of liking the royal family. Like my mom watched the royal wedding, and I had zero interest in that.
Yeah.
But that just kept on going. And then you know, like I'm of Irish descent, and I lived in Amsterdam. But when I went to London for the very first time, nowhere else have I felt more at home more quickly than walking the streets of London. And this was like 2000. I really, really love it there. But of course I do. I've been practicing for it since I was 12.
Okay, I've been prepping for this moment my entire life. No, I feel that way about Ireland. When I left Ireland, while I was in Dublin, I did this tour of Kilmainham Jail, which is a prison where, you know, the English, I think, had taken over, and like they had imprisoned a lot of Irish rebels. And I go to the tour. It's obviously very, very sad and disturbing, but they filmed In the Name of the Father. The Daniel Day-Lewis.
Was that the prison where that took place?
Yes. So I saw that film, and I just was like, I just sort of immediately connected with Irish culture and this the sort of the rebellious nature.
That movie's great.
And the movie's great. And then I was just obsessed with every Irish film, as they say.
Did you like the film?
That was another one I had to be like, what?
Yeah, you couldn't understand them. You were just like, this is it for me, bro.
I was so the Wind That Shakes the Barley, My Left Foot. I just went on this binge of Irish films, and I just fell in love with the culture. So it's always been a place I'm like, I gotta go back, and you know, even though while I'm in Ireland, I don't necessarily look like I'm Irish. And honestly, the most interesting thing, and it's kind of sweet, but the Irish there are like, you can tell they haven't met many people of color, and there's a giddiness when they talk to you. There's a little bit of like, he's a person of color, he's also from New York. I gotta be on my best. Like I gotta impress this young man. And it was very sweet. But I'm like, you know, watch more TV. I don't know what to say. Find there's black Irish people. We gotta do it. Okay. A couple other things. Wrap up. I just want to mention this. Obviously, I'm wearing the Grant Wahl jersey from Olive in York. Grant Wahl, also a friend of yours. Also, yeah, you know, and there was a great moment in Ted Lasso where you are reading his book, and I know the books that you were reading were obviously a big part of the show as well. But obviously, you know, we've spoken about Grant for obviously a very long time on this show, and obviously his passing was very, very difficult. But you can talk about your relationship with him and friendship and how you got to know him.
Sure. You know, as I say, in '98, for that World Cup, I was not into things yet, but I was an avid reader of Sports Illustrated, and they had a big World Cup article that successfully predicted France to win, and that was notable to me. Like, France?
Yeah.
Like, because if you're not into soccer, like, French and athlete didn't go together at all. What is one French athlete you've ever heard of in any other sport before
we're very
that?
biased. We're really uninformed.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is geographical. I understand. But you know, they are dancers and lovers and cat burglars. They're not athletes.
They eat cigarettes. That's what I know.
So like, all right, okay. Well, you can tell you who wrote this. Grant Wahl. Okay, a guy named Grant Wahl. And then I just remember that name, and like over the years was always reading him wherever he was. And as we get into Ted Lasso time, he invites me and Jason to be on his podcast, and we have a nice time doing that. Turns out him and Jason went to rival high schools. Basketball
Kansas City. Yeah.
And and then he was in London for the the big England USA women's match.
Yeah.
That was like European champions versus world champions, and
England won that game.
they did. Yeah. It was a bit of a tough week.
Yeah.
For the U.S. national team. And the next day he came to Richmond, like basically on his way to the airport, and I just walked him around Richmond, and it's the one and only time that I got to meet him. But it was a great day. Like showed him all the stuff. Had a beer at this site. Had a beer at that site. And he came to the house and met my kid, and and then a few months later, he's gone.
Yeah. It's obviously a very difficult, I think the good thing, and I was at his memorial and just hearing all the impact he had and so many positive stories of so many people he helped, and we were, that as well. He was just always kind of just looking out for us, helpful, either recommend people. I honestly think we're on Meadowlark Media. I don't think we would be on Meadowlark Media if it wasn't for Grant Wahl and stuff like that. So, it's I just wanted to get your perspective as well. You mentioned Kansas City real quick. I just wanted to say the 2026 World Cup, obviously coming to the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. Kansas City has 2 sites, but I believe Chicago has 0. So I view in Sudeikis, I've been any sort of talking point because Chicago's left out, and Kansas City get 2 venues.
No, I mean it's because it's been known for a while. Chicago's going to have any, and it would be reciprocal talking points because the one thing would be like, we got World Cup games, and it's like, yeah, well, we have a city government with less corruption and who don't want to deal with FIFA.
We can't say no corruption, just less. That's as good as it gets in this country. All right. The last question I have for you, and I'll let you go. This is just from one of our fans. This is Gully Squad. This is our
Alexis, get in here, buddy. You're gonna miss it. Alexis.
He asked, this is, I just removed it. Okay, this is from Luke Sturgio. He asked a question, obviously, as Coach Beard, what's your beard care routine? Do you have one? I don't know if anybody's ever asked you about that. But.
I do. I do beard oil every morning, and I my very first day on Ted Lasso, my makeup lady, the wonderful Nikki Springall, she started brushing my beard with this big ass brush. I was like, oh, should I be doing that? She's like, yeah, of course you should be doing that. And at the end of the season, she gave me that brush, and I still have that brush today.
Amazing.
And I brush it, because also I can go full I'm not gonna do it here because I got meetings, but I can go full Jack Black with it at this point. It's getting good and long, but as long as you can just guide it down, guide it straight, then you're gonna be able to get into a lot of parties that wouldn't otherwise want you there.
I'm not as familiar with beard care. It's not really been a thing I've had to think about, but it's cool to know, that was one of the things you stole from set.
Technically, yes.
Well, Brendan Hunt, this has been so cool. Can you just mention where people can get tickets for the solo show and all that stuff?
You bet. It's playing Soho Playhouse. If you go to the Soho Playhouse website, that'll be your best bet. I think it's on also might be on TKTS. Or one of the other TKTS knockoffs that I should know the name of, and I'm sure are wonderful organizations that do a lot of good work for the consumer. But Soho Playhouse website will get you there. I think we're sold out Friday. We're definitely not sold out tonight. I don't know if this goes out in time, but Saturday is close to selling out, and it'll eventually come around, the whole country at some point because it's going very well. But I gotta have a baby first, so I'm jamming all this stuff in before we have our baby in March.
Okay, I've never heard of lovemaking as called jamming it in. But hey, man, whatever works.
Hey, man. We all spell romance differently.
You gotta tell your kids about the birds and the bees somehow. But no, congratulations. The show's called Brendan Hunt, the Movement You Need. I have a 10-month-old at home, so I'm in the middle of learning a lot, and he's standing and doing all this other stuff now. So there's a lot of I just baby-proofed the outlets and all that other stuff. So I know exactly what you're going through. But congratulations. Brendan Hunt, the movement you need. Go check it out. Incredible solo show. Shout out to Brendan Hunt. Brendan, thanks so much for joining me, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.